contributions in. Some of those contributions included shares that he had bought of PayPal, which ended up going on to being a multi-billion-dollar company. Today, in recent days, a tax plan that has been approved by the House Ways and Means Committee includes limits on their use by the wealthy, including a provision that would impose restrictions on retirement accounts whose value exceeds $10 million. Now, Peter Thiel is the IRA king, according to John. He's just the king of IRAs. He has amassed $5 billion in a Roth, a feat accomplished by placing his PayPal shares in the account in 1999 when it was a private company. And within a year, their value jumped from $1,664 to $3.8 million. The company became more valuable. Over time, they grew and grew and grew into now billions of dollars. But the general premise of these new rules is that account holders must withdraw 50% of the accounts valued at more than $10 million. Larger accounts must also draw down 100% of Roth account size over $20 million. So somebody like Peter would have to go and take the $5 billion in his Roth IRA and take out all of it but $20 million. Now, why do they want him to take it out? Why do they want to force him to take it out? Well, because of course, they're going to tax him. They're going to take it from him. And so what we are literally watching in real time is somebody who has been on one side of the political aisle that is now having the other side of the political aisle create rules targeted specifically at an individual like this in order to confiscate their wealth. That's what we're watching here. We can call it whatever we want. But the fact is, people got pissed because the news broke that somebody had a lot of money in their Roth IRA. And so they now are stepping in and they're literally creating a rule around it in order to get this individual to get the money out so that the government can then come in and take it. Now, it is not just one individual. There are 29,000 Americans that have an IRA worth $5 million or more. 500 Americans have an IRA worth $25 million or more, and 1 in 4 Americans have no savings for retirement. So there's a very, very big distribution here. Obviously, 25% of Americans have no savings for retirement. 29,000 Americans have $5 million or more in their IRA. So what we're talking about is going to affect a very small portion of the population, but it is still the spirit of the rule that seems wrong. Now, we have a quote from Robert Keebler, who, by the way, just gets internet points for having an awesome name, Robert Keebler. And he said, if Thiel is really clever and can get his adjusted gross income below the threshold, he will avoid this new rule altogether. So I believe the key is that in order for there to be some sort of distribution or withdrawal from the Roth IRA under these new rules, you have to have an income over $400,000. So if you showed up and you said, oh, I only make $250,000, they can't make you then take out the money. So it's specifically targeting people with high income over $400,000 and people with large Roth IRAs. Now, when we look at the ProPublica article that broke this news, they didn't do any favors because they posted it, and the title was The Lord of the Roths, which played into a whole bunch of different social thought processes around wealth and the condemnation of wealth. Now, on top of that, we've got this chart here that shows exactly what happened with the Roth. So you can see there that the Roth account was opened in 1999. He used it to buy founder shares. By the way, they write dirt cheap. No, that was just what the price of the founder shares were. It's not like he got a discount from the other founder shares. He didn't go and negotiate 50% off at the department store. That's what the price of the founder shares were. At the end of the year, the account is worth $1,664. Makes sense. By the time that we see it continue to grow, and you can see it's gone up and down in value. It has not just gone up over time. It's been volatile. That his Roth is worth $5 billion. Now, if an ordinary person had maxed out their Roth contributions every year since 1999 in a standard S&P 500 index fund, they would only have about $260,000. So what becomes fascinating about this is if you simply put your Roth contributions in for 20 years and you invested in the S&P 500, you would end up with $250,000. That's not even enough to live on for most people if you retire at 62 and you're supposed to live to 80. You literally can't retire at 62 and live till you're 77, 78, whatever the life expectancy is today, on $250,000 for the average person. So the existing benchmark that we use does not work in terms of how retirement is supposed to happen. So what we are looking at is somebody who's obviously a good investor. Forget the Roth IRA. Like Peter Thiel has done fantastic, as have many others. But we've also lived over the last 11 years in one of the greatest bull markets in history. And so when you have the stock market going up 20, 30, 40% year after year after year after year for a decade, and people are invested in the stock market in their retirement accounts, there is obviously going to be a lot of money that ends up in those accounts. Forget the outliers. 29,000 Americans have $5 million or more. Now, you may look at that and say, wow, how did they get $5 million in there? But if you simply started with somewhere around $250,000 or $500,000, and you did that back in 2000 when you were 30 years old, and over time, you have watched as the stock market has grown and grown and grown, by the time you had $1 million in there, and then all of a sudden the stock market went up 30% in a year, by the end of the year, you have 1.3 million. And then if the stock market goes up another 20%, you now have over $1.5 million. And this continues year after year after year after year until now you're sitting there and you've got over $5 million in your Roth IRA. That person isn't trying to do anything illicit. They're not trying to do anything nefarious. They simply are saying, tell me the rules and I will do what I'm supposed to do within those rules. Now, what I don't like is that somehow people are saying, well, we don't like the outcome of those rules, so let's change the rules. But they want to do it retroactively. They want to do it to punish people, not necessarily to say, hey, we believe that these rules worked up until now, but we're going to change the rules. And now if we change the rules going forward, this will affect anybody. I should be okay with that. I don't like the fact that they want to change the rules, but if they want to change the rules and they want to implement it correctly, that's their right. We elect people. They go into office. They're there to represent the will of the people. And if that's what they choose to do, that's what they choose to do. That is the beauty of a democracy. But to say we are going to retroactively put this in place and we are going to punish people who have been successful in the existing system feels a little weird. Of course, why do they want the money? Simple. They have a huge tax plan. They want to spend the money. And so if you were to ask me, would I rather Joe Biden or Peter Thiel to have $5 billion to spend? I would much rather Peter Thiel have the money than Joe Biden. By the way, if it was Donald Trump or any other president, I would say the exact same thing. The government officials don't seem so good at investing capital compared to some of the top investors on Wall Street or in venture capital, Silicon Valley, etc. So regardless of which political party is in power or which administration is actually there, I would rather the capital being in the hands of the entrepreneurs and the investors who are financially incentivized to invest in technology, to continue to push the pace of innovation. And so when we look at the actual retirement inequality, we have a chart here that shows the average US retirement savings account balances by net worth percentile. And so the bottom 25%, according to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, basically has nothing. They have no retirement at all. If you then look at the bottom or the 25, 50% percentile, they have just a little bit more than nothing. So they have some retirement, but nothing that is actually material. If you then look at the 50 to 75%, again, not so much. And then if you look at the 75 to 90%, they also have somewhere in that $250,000 range. It is not enough to retire on at the age of 62 and live to 77 or 78 years old. You are talking about 15 years of living on $250,000 in totality. And if you have only been able to grow it to $250,000 by the time you retire, you are unlikely to all of a sudden turn your $250,000 into a couple of $1 million. You do not have the mindset, you do not have the skill set or the experience in investing to take that $250,000 and somehow all of a sudden grow it significantly. So what happens is that 90% or more of the average US retirement savings do not have enough money in it for the individual to retire today and live from 62 to 77 or 78 years old. Now, the top 10%, they have significant amounts in their retirement. What I personally believe is that we should go to that top 10% and we should say, how did you do it? What did you do? Walk us through exactly what you did. And then we should take that information and we should go and we should tell every single American, here is how you can get in a position where you will have enough money when you retire so that you are not dependent on a social security system that we know is supposed to run out of money within the next 12 or 13 years. So that you are not dependent on your government stepping in and saving you. Rather than condemning success, what we should look at is we should go and we should learn and we should take the knowledge of those who have figured it out and we should turn around and as part of a nationwide personal finance and financial education program, we should teach the bottom 90% of people who right now will not have enough money to retire how to do it. We should celebrate success. We should use the education as an opportunity to get more people in a better position rather than simply say, let's take from those that have, and then what we will do is we will give it to the government, and the government will do who knows what. As we talked about, that big infrastructure plan that they want to pay for, we went through it. They want to buy weed to study driving high, and they want to look at invasive plant species removal programs. So not exactly going to help the 90% of Americans or so that don't have enough money to retire.
I see nothing wrong with what Peter did. Just to go back on some of the stuff you're talking about, he played by the rules. If they want to change the rules, that's completely fine. I think he should be allowed to leave it in there. And then going forward, obviously the rules have changed, and that's fine. You have to innovate and change and everything like that. And then I want to go back to what you were talking about the retirement inequality, right? So 55% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. You need a retirement account. You need to have savings. No one is going to come help you. No matter what the government says, that they're looking out for themselves and not for you as an individual. And it also reminds me, you remind me of something that was in Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he said, everyone always comes to him and asks for a job, but no one ever comes to him and asks, like, how can I make money? Like, what are the steps? How did you do it? And that's what I think a lot of people, and even a lot of successful people do. They study what other successful people did, and they don't try to imitate. They try to basically learn from them and then put their own style on things, right? So you see even in sports, right? Kobe watched Michael Jordan, how he did things, footwork, everything like that. It just goes to show, like, you really need to study successful individuals. You need to see what they did. And you don't have to take the exact same steps that they took, but you need to apply some of the same principles that they've applied throughout their life because they know what they're doing.
I completely agree. One of the pieces to this that everyone immediately jumps to is why don't rich people do anything good with their money, right? And so in my very tertiary research of the best business research team that John and I are running solo because Joe's not here, is that there's the Thiel Foundation. And the Thiel Foundation is a private foundation created and funded by Peter Thiel. And the theory of philanthropy is that it is concentrating the bulk of philanthropic effort on what Peter sees as potential breakthrough technologies. In November 2010, Thiel organized a breakthrough philanthropy conference that showcased 8 nonprofits that he believed were working on radical new ideas in technology, government, and human affairs. A similar conference was organized in December 2011 with the name Fast Forward. Now, there are also internal projects as well. The Thiel Fellowship is intended for young visionaries under the age of 20. It offers them a total of $100,000 over 2 years, as well as guidance and other resources to drop out of school and pursue other work, which could involve scientific research, in creating a new startup, or working on a social movement. Selection for the fellowship is through a competitive annual process with about 20 to 25 fellows selected annually. And Thiel announced the fellowship at TechCrunch in September of 2010. Then Imitado, I believe is how you say it, is a project funded by the Thiel Foundation that aims to understand the world through the lens of Reneé Girard's mnemonic theory. Then there's Breakout Labs. It's a grant-making body operating as part of the Thiel Foundation. Breakout Labs gives grants for early-stage scientific research that is too speculative or long-term to interest the for-profit sector. but may be unsuitable for traditional sources of funding for scientific research due to its radical or offbeat nature. And grants are made through a competitive application and selection process. And then there's a ton of other organizations that he has supported. And so when you look at this, I don't think anyone is claiming that only the private sector can solve problems. I don't think anyone is claiming, well, actually, there are a lot of people claiming that only the public sector can solve problems. What I think that we are watching here, though, is that we should have both addressing problems. But what we should not do is we should not say to people, here are the rules to play by. We reserve the right in the future to not only change the rules, but to come back and punish you for doing that stuff. Because if the rules were different, those individuals may have done something else with their money at the time. And so it ends up being less about what the actual outcome of the situation is, and it's more the philosophy and the spirit that the second that we saw somebody being successful, a bunch of people run in, they try to change the rules and punish that individual. 29,000 Americans have $5 million in their retirement account. The bottom 90% of Americans don't have enough in their retirement account to retire. Let's go help the bottom 90% of Americans figure out how do we get enough money in their retirement accounts? Because what we know is that the Social Security program is going to run out. They cannot count on the Social Security program based on its current structure to be there to provide them funds on their retirement. We must teach people how to have enough in their retirement to be self-sustaining so that the government does not become the sugar daddy to 90% of Americans once they hit the retirement age. That's what's crazy to me about this.
Yeah, and you're talking about the private and public sectors kind of solving these issues. And to be honest, the private sector is really, really good at solving a lot of issues. So you see with Elon Musk and SpaceX and NASA kind of giving them the ability to help solve some of the problems that we have been working on and help innovate in that space. But the public sector is also good at that, right? So we do need a mix of the two. And then on the philanthropy note, I have no right to tell anyone what to do with their money. I think we should all play by the same rules. And if we all play by the same rules, and if the rules want to change, that's fine, but they shouldn't be punished or, I guess, back paying on rules because you only know what you know at the time, right? So you don't know what you don't know. And if they change the rules, like it's okay. Just don't punish people for playing by the rules at the time.
Completely agree. Next topic. We're going to just start running through these because we got a lot to get through in the next 30 minutes. DoorDash has flipped Uber's market cap. Not what most people thought was going to happen. But you know what? Shooters shoot, and DoorDash is popping. So DoorDash has expanded its marketplace offering with alcohol on demand as well. People like to eat, they like to drink. DoorDash there to solve both. So DoorDash has increased its revenue by 240% in 2020 from $850 million to now $2.9 billion in top line revenue. They serve over 4,000 cities across all 50 states. And they have 18 million users, mostly from the United States. 75% of restaurants agree that DoorDash has allowed them to reach new customers. So when you think about this, there is a very big difference between DoorDash, which is food and alcohol, and Uber, which is mostly riders and some food. So we can look at the market caps here. These two companies started out real different, right? At the bottom, DoorDash. At the top, Uber. What we're watching is this is just from January of 2021. Literally, Uber was, up around $100 billion market cap. DoorDash was sub $50 billion market cap. Now, as you would expect, how do they end up crossing? Well, Uber's got to come down and DoorDash has got to go up, and they end up crossing it kind of in the middle, right around the $75 billion market cap. And so when you look at this, there was this great tweet by a gentleman, Pete Flint. I don't know Pete. Pete's probably a smart guy because this tweet was pretty on the spot. He said the biggest marketplaces have non-commoditized supply sides and focus on must-haves, not nice-to-haves. And so what he means by that is the supply side is either food, riders, whatever you are providing, right? The demand side ends up being what do people want? What are they ordering? And so the biggest travel marketplaces sell beds, not flights, duh. And the biggest gig marketplaces sell food, not rides. And that's exactly what we're seeing here with this DoorDash and Uber, is that the biggest gig marketplaces are selling food, not riders. Not what you would have expected if you go back 5-6 years when most of the talk around the gig economy was all about ride sharing. It was all about how do I take people and move them to another location and do it efficiently and for simple cost. What we're watching now, though, is the food delivery businesses are starting to rise at a much faster pace, and DoorDash has now eclipsed Uber. We then have the meal delivery monthly sales, outsourced research right here by Bloomberg Second Measure. Great job from the team over there. And what we see is that Uber Eats still has 23% of the market. It does not include purchases made with Uber Cash. Some sales are indistinguishable from Uber Rides, especially in May to August of 2019. But they have 23% market share. But if you go down and you look at DoorDash, DoorDash has 57% market share. So even though DoorDash only has the food and alcohol, they have 57% of the market. Uber has ride sharing plus Uber Eats. Uber Eats has been growing very significantly. If you go all the way back to 2018, they didn't have a lot of market share. Now they have sizable market share. Postmates only 3%, Grubhub's got 16, and other is down around 1% combined. But Uber Eats is 23% of market share in the food delivery or meal delivery, plus their ride sharing is not enough to be a more valuable business than DoorDash. And what this tells me here is that DoorDash continues to just expand their market dominance. Uber is continuing to grow as well, but what really is happening is they're squeezing out all the other players. This is becoming an Uber Eats versus DoorDash. They combined make up, 80% of the market, those two companies alone, and everybody else kind of, plays catch up to them.
Yeah, this to me, and looking at the market caps, actually speaks more to Uber as a whole company, right? So they have the Uber Eats and then the rides as well. It speaks to them kind of going down a little bit more than it does speak to DoorDash going up. So Uber looks like it dropped about 25% or more from its all-time highs this year. And DoorDash has kind of stayed a little similar to what it was back in mid-February, right? So it really just speaks, I think, more to Uber and their issues on the ride-sharing side. But then on the food delivery side, look, we have seen since coronavirus, we have seen an absolute explosion in online deliveries. And look, DoorDash is king. If it's convenient, if it's cheap, if it's safe, people are going to flush to that. And the free markets will decide the winner.
Do you think that Uber Eats will end up ever eclipsing DoorDash, or do we think DoorDash has a big enough moat and they're growing fast enough that this is just a continued dominance by DoorDash in the market?
Like DoorDash just continues to be the market leader in that space.
Plus 50% market share. Let's use that as the metric. Do we think DoorDash can hold on to plus 50%
over the next
share?
10 years? I see them staying at plus 50%. I don't know what the future holds, obviously, but I see them staying as a majority. Yep. For a very, very long time.
I tend to agree. Now, the next question is, do we think that Uber will become a food delivery business that has ride sharing rather than a ride sharing business that has some food delivery?
I don't know the economics behind it, but I have a feeling they make a lot more money off their ride sharing, right?
I would guess they make more money on the food delivery. Yeah, because remember, the food delivery is much more controlled, right? I go right to the restaurant, I grab the food, I leave. I don't have to deal with the actual customers, tracking them down. They're complaining. There's a whole bunch of complexity. I don't know that for sure, but definitely I think that that's one piece. The second thing is I'm wondering about the delivery fee itself. So if there's a flat delivery fee on top of every order, you probably can manipulate that in a positive way to actually get better unit economics than, hey, you want to go from point A to point B. And sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it's not, depending on all these other factors. That's probably harder to produce consistent profit.
Yeah. And look, I think this is actually generally a positive thing for the restaurant industry, as I got the number from DoorDash, so take it as like kind of with a grain of salt. But they said 75% of customers, DoorDash actually helped them, or 75% of restaurants, DoorDash helped them reach new customers, right? So it's opening up this giant new market that previously wasn't really available 10 years ago. So it's interesting to see. I think it only grows from here. Unfortunately, people are pretty lazy, so they like to have their food brought to them, and we'll see. I think DoorDash remains king for a long time.
Do we think that Uber, people don't understand, it's a $75 billion business? Do we feel like it's a misunderstood company, or do we feel like this is probably a good valuation?
What do you think their core focus is?
I think that Uber is going to shift to be more and more delivery of non-humans than ride sharing. The ride sharing business is going to get even more commoditized over time. Two is, it's very clear that they've rose prices, they've increased prices, but a lot of that's due to the driver shortage. But what they were able to do was show that actually drivers are getting paid more than they were previously. So a good portion of that increase in price is actually going to the driver rather than to the company. So that's actually, in my opinion, not a good sign for the business, right? It's great for the drivers. We should celebrate that. But for the business, if your pricing power that you could exert in the market is going to lead to you not making more money, but rather the drivers making more money, it actually means in some weird way that you don't have as much pricing power as you would like. And so then what you end up doing is you have to look for alternative ways to drive revenue. Food is a great one. When they start getting into more logistics, like delivering packages and doing a lot of that type of stuff, you could easily see that that there's some competition there. Also, people forget, I'm biased because I've had them on the podcast before, but GoPuff's a big business.
No free ads. GoPuff's nice.
Listen, I'll give GoPuff a free ad. Those guys are great. GoPuff is a real big business. And so you could see a world where all of a sudden Uber tries to get into the game of how do we deliver groceries or other types of goods. The secret to the food delivery and the GoPuff model, GoPuff literally has distribution centers. We talked a lot about that on the podcast episode I did, where it's one single location. You always come back, you grab from there, and then you go deliver. With food, it's a fixed location as well. So, if you're picking up, I don't know, Chipotle, right? You always know where the Chipotle is. And so there's this component of fixed supply from a geographic standpoint. But humans, you don't have that. So you can look at all of a sudden, let's say that a rider in Manhattan wants a ride, that you can pick them up anywhere on the street. It's just they just walked out anywhere. And so sometimes it's a good location, sometimes it's not in a good location, sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's not. Like you get in all these kind of crazy things. But the restaurants end up being actually the second best thing. The first is dedicated places like GoPuff. Second is restaurants. Third is just, hey, wherever you are, press the button and we'll come pick you up. Yeah,
but I think there's more competitors in that space, right? So
in which space?
In the food delivery space, right? They're both gig worker economy. They're both part of the gig worker economy, but I think there's Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, like there's all those different things. And really for the ride delivery space, there's about 3 or 4, or really 2 big players, just probably Uber and Lyft. And then there's like 3 or 4 other small players. But I don't know. We'll see over time. None of us are crystal ball readers.
That's true. All right, we hit 1,000 likes already. We're off to a great start today. You guys doing a great job. Smash the like button. Let's get to 2,000 likes. We get to 2,000 likes today, and we will give out 1 million Satoshis. I'm not wasting any time today. When we get done with the interview, we're done. Entry fee. It's a free show, but what's not free is your entry fee. That means you got to hit the like button to start watching. We appreciate you guys. Are we going to do it? Are we going to do it?
I think we had.
Are we? All right, here we go. We're going to start heading into the land, and no one wanted us to go, but we got to go because nobody else, no other business show is going to talk about this stuff, but we got to talk about it. When people do good things, we're going to celebrate them. We're going to clap it up. We're going to tell everyone they're doing good things. When people do dumb things, though, somebody's just got to say, hey, this is hypocrisy. So let's just dive right in. Just close your noses and let's dive into the absolute mud right now. Here we go. AOC's dress designer came out. Frank Luntz. I don't know who he is, but here is the news that broke over the weekend. The tax the rich dress designer, whom AOC went to the Met Gala with, owes over $100,000 in back taxes, received a $40,000 PPP loan, has legions of unpaid interns, owes $60,000 in workers' compensation, and still found $250,000 for a table at the Met Gala. Now, couple of things right out of the gate. One, fact, we know that this is the designer of the dress, the tax the rich dress. Two, I personally don't know. I don't know, John, if you know, if this was AOC's idea or if this was the designer's idea. Could have been AOC saying, hey, I want a dress that does this. The designer just does what they're asked. Or it could have been the designer's idea. Probably not that important of a detail, but I want to call it that I don't know the answer to that. The third thing is owing back taxes. Very relevant detail here. The PPP loan, I actually don't think is that important, right? It's, look, the government offered a program. If you want to go take a loan, go take a loan. You either have to pay it back or they end up treating everyone the same and certain people didn't have to pay it back. Whatever. If somebody needs help and they are offered it and you want to take it, that's up to you. So I actually don't think the PPP thing is that big of a deal, but I understand that people will yell and scream about it, say, hey, if you owe taxes, you're taking money from the government, yada, yada, whatever. legions of unpaid interns. This actually, I spent 30 seconds Googling around, and supposedly there are allegations, important allegations, that the designer was allegedly running the equivalent of a sweatshop, I think was the exact terminology that I read, which employed legions of unpaid interns. Now, I'm not from the fashion industry. I know it's confusing. I'm very fashionable, so it might be surprising to some that I'm actually not an expert on the fashion industry, but it wouldn't surprise me if the fashion industry is one of those industries where unpaid interns is actually still the norm rather than the outlier. I don't know that for sure, but when people start to say you have legions of unpaid interns, legions is a pretty inflammatory, emotionally driven word. I'm assuming that that person is biased. On top of that, when people start to use the term sweatshop here in the United States, hard for me to believe that it's a true sweatshop. I've seen the documentaries of things like in China, pretty bad conditions. So I'm going to basically say that this is likely to be, somebody who has said, look, they're not paying people enough money. They should pay them more, etc. Okay, let's take the data point for what it is. And then owes $62,000 in workers' compensation. I don't know what that essentially is, who it's owed to, how factual it is, and then found $250,000 for a table at the Met Gala. My guess is that the table was not paid for, that it was either a ticket that was given or the Met Gala. I think I'm on to them. They got a lot of people showing up to the Met Gala that don't seem to be buying the tables. So I'm wondering if the Met Gala just puts these radical prices out there and says, if you're rich, you pay.
For the few suckers that actually pay?
Yeah. If you don't get an invitation, you pay. But if you get an invitation, wink, wink, we got you. Just come in the door. Here's your ticket. You don't pay. So that's my guess is what's going on here. I can't imagine that they're actually paying for the $250,000 for the table. But hey, who knows? Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. So the important part, though, and the part that I do think smells of hypocrisy and is a fair critique, is owing $100,000 in back taxes, but then running around with the dress, whether you're the designer, etc., saying tax the rich. There's a lot of hypocrisy there. That's where I think people say, wait a second, hold on. What are we talking about here, right? If all of a sudden people aren't actually paying their taxes, right? Assuming that this is accurate, if they're not paying their taxes, how can they yell and scream at other people to pay more taxes than they already owe? Because we're not talking about, the rich people have back taxes to pay and they're refusing to pay them. We're not yelling and screaming and saying that the rich people aren't paying taxes. What we're yelling and screaming about is tax the rich more. The more part is the part that gets left off. It's not tax them because they pay no taxes. It's not tax them in the sense that they're not paying the taxes. It's we should tax them more, which again, maybe you believe in that, maybe you don't. I'm not here to judge, whatever you want. But what I do think is really tough pill to swallow is when you say tax the rich, but you owe $100,000. That to me, like now we're entering into the hypocrisy zone. And I think this is the part where people just say, look, you lose credibility. If this is really what you believe, and then these details come out, people lose credibility in the conversation because they just say, like, what? I don't know, John, what do you think? Like this to me just is weird.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that we don't know if these are true, right? I have not seen her tax returns. I have not seen what is going on in that situation. I think if she owes money and then create a dress with collaboration with whoever it is, saying tax the rich, I think that's a ridiculous thing to do. And I want to reiterate the stat that we said last week. In 2018, the top 1% of taxpayers paid more income tax than the bottom 90% combined. It's not tax the rich, it's tax the rich more. And that was very, very well said. It's almost comical. It really is.
So rather than tax the rich, as you guys all know from last week, I have a better idea. We even created a t-shirt around this idea. Is I don't want to spend time complaining, yelling, and condemning success. I don't want to attack the successful people. I want the successful people to tell us exactly how they did it so we can go tell the 90+% of Americans who aren't going to have enough money to retire. I want the 80% of millionaires in America who inherited $0 to tell us how they became millionaires so we can go teach and actually create financial education for the people who aren't millionaires yet. For the 33% of millionaires in America who never earned more than $100,000 in a single year, I want them to tell us how they did it and what the principles around personal finance they used, so we can go teach everybody else how to do it. All boats should rise together. We should educate the entire country so that more people can benefit here, rather than trying to condemn success. When you condemn success, you rip away hope of people who want social mobility. And so what we can do is, by educating people, by empowering them, by giving them the information, anyone in this country can become financially secure. So, you know what I think we should do? I think we got the shirts. I think we have them.
Everyone knows what we're trying to do.
Listen, we just tell people this is the goal. Is if you can educate yourself, what do you want to do? I know you guys all know. Let's get rich. Forget taxing the rich. Let's all get rich. Let's literally make 330 million Americans rich.
The boats should rise together.
All boats rise together. Some people are further ahead than others, but rather than in the 10 or 12 states in the country where it is mandated to have personal finance classes, all 50 states teach financial education, teach personal finance. If you're rich already, you have a duty as an American to turn around and tell the other Americans how to do it. Help them, help them, help them, help them. And so let's all get rich. Let's figure out the aspirational messaging around this. Rather than trying to attack each other, let's simply try to all win together. There's nothing more fun than winning, and there's nothing more fun winning than doing it with your friends. That is the whole point of this. And so if we can teach people how to do this, it is likely, again, there's no guarantee. There's risk involved. You got to do the work. You have to be disciplined, all that stuff. But it is likely that you can build a life of wealth, happiness, and financial security. That's it.
Education would help this problem a lot. Floyd Mayweather has a good, and I'm paraphrasing here, a good quote about this, which is basically like, hey man, like he's got a bunch of rich friends. He's like, hey man, like going on your boat's cool, going on your jet's cool, but I need you to teach me how to get one. If you can't teach me how to get one, you're not really my friend. Right. And that's a great point.
And
that's the whole thing. He's like, look, it's dope that you have all these things. It's awesome. Like, great. But like, I want these things still. And look, not everyone optimizes for that. I think everyone does optimize for freedom, though, in some aspect of life. And whether that's financial freedom, your time, anything like that. So education is key. Educate yourselves. Open an investment account. Open a savings account. Open up all those things that can help you get financially free.
Thebestbusinessshow.com. You can go there and you can go ahead and you can buy Let's Get Rich shirts. They're great. They come on the front or the back. And then let's all go learn how to get rich. Like, that's the key. Let's go get rich together.
If you're wearing this shirt and you're not trying to learn how to get rich, you're not going to wear it. You got Let's Get Rich.
Next topic. Going deeper into the interwebs. The internet allegedly, apparently, I watched the videos, seems pretty legit, helped solve finding the body of Gabby Petito, which, one, incredibly sad story. Probably one of the saddest stories that I've seen. And all I keep thinking about is the parents of this child must be absolutely devastated, right? And so to start with, we should start there, which is, this is by far the reason why it's risen to national conversation and everyone's talking about it is because of how devastating it is, how scary it is, I think, for parents. And on top of that, how confusing it is to them as well, right? Of just, how could this happen? Now, with that said, this is a crazy story about how the internet has contributed. There were a man and a woman who were vlogging, I guess, YouTube vloggers, driving through the same exact national forest, the Bridger Teton? Teton? Okay, you guys got me. I can't pronounce it. Bridger Teton National Forest in Wyoming. And when they were driving, they had a video camera on, I guess, like their dashboard of their car. And as they're driving by, they happen to drive by this van right here, which later on, a couple of days later, they were editing video for their YouTube channel, and they put two and two together. They said, wait a second. We were in the same national forest. We passed a white van. They remembered that the van had Florida plates because they themselves were from Florida. They thought it was interesting that there was another Florida vehicle out there. And so they went back into the footage. They found this. They ended up actually taking it and uploading it to YouTube and saying, hey, kind of help us out. Like, is this the van? And so very quickly, the internet, which is undefeated, went through the video and they were able to locate what appears to be one single sandal off the back of the vehicle. Also, it appears that there's a cell phone sitting on the floor outside the back of the vehicle. There is a hat that people identified as Gabby Petito's hat there. They were able to locate the GPS of where this actual footage was from. And then I even saw one video, which would be too hard to pull up because it's not exactly clear, where somebody slowed down the footage so slow. And as it's approaching this white van, they believed, and again, unconfirmed, but they believed that somebody was actually had the back door open, heard the car coming, and then closed the back door as these guys were approaching. But it was all on camera. And so I don't know the details of all of this, but if we pull up the next image that we have here, the van, my understanding, is located at that GPS coordinates are, which is right off that road right there. Then the other red flag is where a body that is believed today to be Gabby Petito's body was located. So the footage from the YouTubers ended up actually bringing awareness to the situation. There was then the GPS coordinates located. They did a search. They found it. The National Forests are massive. Without this video, I think that there's a high likelihood that we don't have the kind of the situation that we're in now where a body's been found. And then KFC from Barstool, which one of the funnier guys on the internet, went viral last night where he said, the internet is unbelievable, right? I tend to say undefeated, unbelievable, same thing. The YouTube vlogger spotted the van while editing footage, reported it, police searched the area, and sadly, but for the investigation, found her body. Truly a needle in the haystack found on the internet. This, to me, is one of the craziest stories that I've seen in a while in terms of how serendipitous the YouTube vloggers. Another part of this I saw was somebody who's like I don't know if I want to call him a TikTok star, but somebody who's got a big TikTok following actually picked up who they believe is the gentleman in this thing, and they gave him a ride, and then they went on TikTok and they basically like, hey, I think I picked that guy up a couple of days ago, yada yada, whatever. And so like the power of the internet and social media has completely changed the game forever.
Yeah, first I want to offer my condolences to her family. This story is insane. Right. The fact that these vloggers kind of went back and when they were editing footage, they had that like aha moment of, wait, that is the van that we've been seeing all over the news. And look, I think the main thing about this story, besides kind of all the facts and what really happened, was the internet is such a powerful tool. The reach of the internet it's ridiculous, right? It's undefeated. When a bunch of people come together, it's a massive reach is all I can kind of harp on. And look, there's a lot of conspiracy theories on the internet, right? I was watching the videos. They say a guy was in the background, all that. I do not know the facts. It's a very sad story. And I love how a community and a country kind of came together to help solve this crime.
So important that there's still a lot that's not known in this whole situation. But the power of the internet on display here is incredible. There's still a lot to go. The guy is missing / hiding, whatever. I don't really know kind of all the details. On top of that is the other two things is supposedly on Netflix. I see folks in the comments talking about it. There is a movie or a documentary called Clickbait, which is all about a similar type of story where the internet is involved. And two, and I didn't know this, but supposedly there's lots of disappearances and like kind of crazy stories that happen in these national parks. And I guess at some point, from what I was reading online, it's a little unclear, but the data around collecting, how often does it happen and all that is unclear. And so it's just a really sad story, one. But two is, I I think that what we are going to watch is just like we were talking earlier about politicians that rise to power that are younger and start to use the internet in different ways. What we're watching now is an entire generation of people who 25 years ago, there was almost nobody who was just driving around with cameras sitting on their dashboard, right? Like they literally had remember the old school like handheld cameras that everyone would do?
The camera pops out, you can see what you're doing.
Yeah. Now everyone's got a cell phone at a minimum. They've got a video camera and a regular camera. But on top of that, the whole rise of vlogging and kind of documenting everything ends up leading to something like this. To me is just, I don't think anyone was doing, hey, I'm going to record today because I think I'm going to discover something, right? But it's just an incredible story to also not only have the footage, but then to immediately turn around and get the footage out to people, to get it reported to the FBI, et cetera, and to be able to contribute in this way. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
I'm on a different note. I am like very at odds with the fact that we are going more digital. People have these cameras, all that all the time, but people are so like quick trigger to pull it out and video record something because they want to go viral instead of it's said all the time, instead of living in the moment, right? So I see a lot of people watch an amazing event happen through their screen, even though they're at the event, right? So it's a little different in that note, but yeah, look, it helped solve this issue here in this sad story. So I'm very grateful for it.
We will see what happens as the story progresses, but still, obviously, lots of questions. Another thing that happened over the weekend is completely changing topics and tone. Is SpaceX flew 4 people to space, and you might have heard of Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic doing this, but their rides basically lasted about 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Right? They kind of went to the edge of space. I would consider it not real space, but whatever. Kind of went to the edge of space, kind of like an airplane going real high. Technically, yes, they went to kind of suborbital space, and then they came back down. Still, really, really cool stuff that they were able to do that. But SpaceX took 4 people and they launched them to space. And they went around the Earth for 3 days. This was like real space stuff. And then they came back. It's called the Inspiration 4 mission. And they landed in the water. And to me, the part that is so crazy about this is not even that they did it. Because I had somebody who DM'd me on Twitter when I was tweeting about this. And I really respect this individual. They're in the media. And they said, look, this is no different than any other technical thing that SpaceX has done in terms of launching a rocket, sending it into orbit, and then bringing it back down, which is true. Like, from my understanding, there's nothing that was technically different, except for that there's 4 people who weren't astronauts in there. Now, they trained, right? It's not like they just rolled out of bed and went in and went up to space. They trained for it. But these 4 people are private citizens to actually fly and orbit the Earth. And so it was the first entirely non-professional crew to become astronauts. I guess you become an astronaut once you're actually in space. It was the first Black female pilot of space flight. There was the youngest American citizen to fly in space. And it was the first private SpaceX space flight. I mean, this is awesome.
I love that photo.
This photo is all time. Like, how do you not get excited about
They look like they're having the time of their lives.
How do you not get excited about innovation, technology, space, etc. when you see something like this? Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can break down here. First of all, this was the highest altitude human astronauts have traveled since the last Hubble Space Telescope servicing mission in 2009. So in over a decade, this is the highest altitude that human astronauts have traveled. The SpaceX Senior Director of Human Spaceflight, we've got a quote here that says, the long-term vision is that space flight becomes airline-like. You buy a ticket and you go. Pretty dope. Like,
that's awesome. That's an all-time title.
Senior Director of Human Spaceflight.
Yeah, you like meet someone like, oh, what do you do? I just help people go to space.
So like space flight becoming airline-like would be pretty cool. Sounds like we're on our way there. Then we've got the director of NASA's Commercial Spaceflight Division. And with private companies bringing their own capital and their own capabilities, NASA can just leverage that. We don't have to build everything ourselves. And then we can focus on the deep space exploration missions. Pretty damn cool there as well. And so when you then look at, first, we've got these tweets. Jeff Bezos congratulating Elon Musk, Elon saying thank you, and our friend Jimmy, Mr. Beast. Look at you guys being all friendly. All-time response. Again, the internet is undefeated. Absolutely awesome. And then we have probably the coolest part of this, I think, in most people's eyes, is the people who actually wrote this, they were raising money. And they were raising money for St. Jude's Hospital. And when they came back, the Inspiration 4, which is pretty crazy that the Inspiration 4 has a Twitter account, said, happy, healthy, and home. Welcome back to Earth. Tag the 4 people. Inspiration's 4 mission doesn't end here. Help us reach our $200 million fundraising goal for St. Jude. And then Elon Musk on a random, what is this, Saturday, just coming in off the top rope, 360 windmill dunking. Count me in for 50 mil. The guy absolutely is a boss. Created a company, launched 4 people, raised a bunch of money, and then just said, you know what, screw it. Let me just chuck in an extra $50 million to help out the cause.
Dropping 50 mil from his iPhone.
I mean, noted good guy.
Noted good guy.
Right? So when we look at this, really, really, really cool to see the power of this. Shocked. I'm absolutely shocked that we are not seeing more coverage of this in the national press.
Yeah, I didn't really see about this until the day of their launch. One question for you. Would you go to space if it was offered?
To space, yes. To Mars, I'd have to see somebody else go first and come back.
Land on Mars and then come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to go to space, like those 4 did it.
Yeah.
Like me, you, Joe, and Paulina. Let's
All
go.
time.
Let's go. You
All
pay.
time.
I'll be there.
I'm not paying. I literally thought I'm not paying.
Right. So I think that there's just a huge piece of this around more people should be talking about this. We should be celebrating the innovation, the technology, the success with this. It is absolutely mind blowing to me that more people aren't talking about.
You know, something I saw that was wild was one of these astronauts. He was watching a movie on the way down. He had like an iPad with him.
What are you gonna do for 3 days?
On the when
You
they're
ever been
down
in an
the
elevator?
ocean?
You ever been in an elevator with 3 strangers and it's kind of weird for a couple seconds while you're waiting until you get to the floor and get off? No.
So everyone have a good one.
Imagine going and doing that in space where you can't
They're
go
not
anywhere.
strangers. They trained for this together.
Okay.
You bond.
Yeah. Okay.
Look at they were having so much fun in the photo there.
Yeah. Do we think that photo was staged?
I don't know.
All right, we'll see. All right, here's the deal.
Look at them.
We got a lot more to cover today. I need you guys to smash the like button. I'm going to count to 3, and I need you to hit the like button because if we get to 2K likes, I'll give away 1 million Satoshis today. Easy, no problem, easy peasy. On the count of 3, ready? 1, 2, 3, smash the like button. We are going to play a real short commercial. I'm going to go get Udi, and then we're going to come right back. And we are going to talk about all things Bitcoin, maximalism, memes, metaverse, the whole 9 yards. We'll be right back, and we will get after it.
but it's always been you. Soft lights, pretty music playing through the night, drinking wine till even don't seem right, living like a foolish king. Never got me anything, 'cause you are the end of the rainbow. You've been there all this time, but this fool never did know, but it's always been. I'm lost and I've won, but it's always been you. Soft lights, pretty music playing through the night, drinking wine till even don't seem right, living like a foolish king. Never got me anything, 'cause you are the end of the rainbow. You've been there all this time, but this fool never did know, but it's always been. Thank you.